from trade to diplomacy. A lot of news coming from the G7. Let me turn to Remi Piet. He's a research associate at the Florida International University. His focus is on political economies and foreign policy, and he joins us from Miami. Remi, let me begin with the U.S.-China trade war, I should say, and mixed messages, as we heard Nathan mention, coming from this White House, from President Trump specifically. What do you make of what you've heard? Certainly a lot of conflicting messages here.
Well, mixed messages, but at the same time, you can actually argue that we've seen some progress over the last 24 hours. When Donald Trump arrived fairly isolated in Biarritz for the G7 summit, he actually had to engage to conversation with other world leaders that underlined the fact that there was some serious stress on the global economy and that engaging further and further without a clear end in sight into a trade conflict with China was not in the interest of anyone here around the table. So basically, I think on this case, Donald Trump, as on other cases such as the digital tax or some environmental green funds or other issues such as Iran, Donald Trump was actually much less belligerent than he used to be and listened to the other perspective of world leaders, and there was some clear progress made over the weekend.
Well, tomorrow is a new day, so we'll see what happens when he wakes up tomorrow. Let me move on to Emmanuel Macron, really playing the role of a mediator here when it comes to Iran. Met with Iran's foreign minister, invited Javad Zarif to attend the G7 on the sidelines for talks with his foreign minister. What do you make of that? And how realistic is it to think that presidents of Iran and Donald Trump could possibly be meeting face-to-face, which is what Macron says he's working on?
Well, definitely this summit is a clear success for Macron and for the French diplomacy. The move to have Mohammad Javad Zarif come to Biarritz while he's actually under American sanctions was a clear bet from the French diplomacy, but that allowed the French foreign minister and Javad Zarif to discuss on what could be first draft of discussion in an eventual meeting between Rouhani and Trump. And we're so far away from the rhetoric that we had just a few weeks ago about potential escalation of conflict between Iran and the U.S. or Iran and Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf. Here we're talking about the possibility of a gathering or a discussion under the right circumstances, which still obviously have to be decided and agreed on. But that is a clear step forward in terms of de-escalating the conflict in the Persian Gulf today.
Russia joining the G7, turning it into G8. President Trump says he's open to that next year. Is that a good idea?
Well, President Trump has always been in favor of having Russia back into the G8 summit, and that's actually a position from European countries to not let that happen until there's a clear progress on the Ukrainian conflict today. The next G7 summit is going to be in Miami here, so obviously the host country will be the U.S. with a certain more capacity to shape the agenda and issue those invitations. What has been decided in terms of Russia, however, for the moment, is another summit between Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia, such as what we call the Normandy panels of negotiation to try to move away from the gridlock. What we've seen over the last, not only this weekend, but also the previous week when President Putin came to Paris and met with Macron, is trying to clearly delineate the differences and the disagreement between Russia and Western powers. What we've seen on this full week and weekend of negotiation is a G7 that has allowed to simplify the lines of conflicts and try to find some clear ways to move forward on some key issues of disagreement, international disagreement today.
And how unusual would it be if President Trump actually goes ahead with his idea of holding next year's summit at his resort in Miami? I mean, a lot of questions about conflict of interest.
Well, that would not be the first time that there would be a question of conflict of interest. Obviously, that would be a clear coup from the Trump administration to have it at a Trump resort in Doral. But I mean, it's not probably this is going to be something that's going to be bringing headlines and bringing some worries about indeed conflict of interest and use of a large international summit in the best interest of Donald Trump and his family. However, we must not move away from what's essential here. It's not so much the location of the next summit, it's much more what is discussed. We've seen some clear progress this year on terms of taxation of digital companies, in terms of finding a common budget for wildfires right now now in the Amazon, green funds also with increased participation from European countries, led by France and Jamaica for developing nations, a series of clearing of progress. Hopefully, whether there's this level of progress next year, if the summit is in the Trump resort or outside, is actually just made for headlines. What's more at stake is actually resolution and more global collaboration on key topics.
We'll see what happens. Remi Piet, thank you so much.